What is Special Surfers? How is it changing lives? And why shouldn't we judge a book by its cover? Well, if you'd like to find out, then you're in the right place. Welcome to Between Views. I'm your host, Alec Koski. This podcast aims to cast light on and connect you with inspirational people, identify them as potential mentors in your journey, and share their stories and wisdom with the world. In this episode, we converse with Nanci Boutet on the fly about special surfers and dive into some exceptional life wisdom. Just before we get started, if you enjoy listening to this episode, I'd like to invite you to leave a star rating on whichever service you found us, and also the opportunity to join the Between Views Patreon community that has just opened. This is the best way you can support the podcast. We hope you enjoy. Alright, welcome to Between Views. This is a rolling episode which we are starting in the car, which is very fitting for our next guest, someone who's always on the go. Nanci, welcome to the show.
Thanks, I'm happy to be here.
Now, I always start the show by writing a little blurb that I want to say before we get going. So here it is. When I first met Nanci, it was through an introduction to her through my boss, Pete. We rented boards from her old shop and eventually accompanied Pete on a visit to her house. Since meeting her, she's been one of the most inviting people in my life and allowed me to join many an adventure, be it from lending me wetsuits and boards for a surf, to inviting me clamming with some extra gumboots, or even as far as Thanksgiving dinner at her beach house in Costa Rica. Nanci will take people along with her. Nanci's one of the most dedicated, fast-moving and active people I've ever met. Her ability to network, trust in others, and call out absolutely any nonsense is something which I admire deeply. She is also a family woman and an incredibly hard worker. Alongside all of this, she is the head of an amazing charity surf event known as Special Surfers. And today I'm fortunate enough to have one of my biggest role models in the US sitting right in front of me. Welcome, Nanci.
Happy to be here. Hi, Alec.
Hey, so we might as well jump right into it since we're on the roll. So question one is, what is Special Surfers and how did it come about?
Special Surfers is a program that I started in 2003. So this is year 21 since we're speaking together in 2024. A friend of mine who was working with kids on the spectrum, the Asperger autism spectrum, asked me if I would take some kids out surfing because I owned a surf shop and I had the equipment. And I said, sure, why not? And we took 3 kids out surfing with my husband and my son, and we had a blast. So the next year we ran it again, and we had 23 kids. And then the next month after that, we had 53 kids, and it's been growing ever since. And we just had an event yesterday, and there were 29 kids and young at heart adults in wheelchairs and a total of 225 registered special surfers for that one event in June, which is a record. And what a special surfer is someone who has any kind of a special need, be it autism, Asperger, Down syndrome, Dubowitz syndrome, spastic quadriplegia, full-on wheelchair, no movement, to hyperactive disorders and anxiety. If you're depressed, we want you to come and cheer up. Anything that you feel like you need a boost, come on down and surf.
So I didn't realize that it actually had expanded to include all of that as well. So the anxiety and depression, that has that always been a part of what you're offering?
Yes, it's never been defined who is invited, except that I define it by just come on down. And if someone typical wants to come down and surf and they're not the perfect fit for being a surfer, I feel like even if they come down and they get a free surf, they're going to see that maybe they should be on the other side of the coin, and they'll come down and volunteer, because once you volunteer for this, you're pretty much addicted. And I have so many volunteers that have been coming for years and years and years, and they plan their summer around these 3 events.
Yeah, like where did those guys come from yesterday? The ones who came from super far away just for one day?
Oh, Ontario. They drove. So it was a family, a husband and wife, and their, I would guess she was probably 12-year-old daughter and they drove overnight, Monday night, 13 hours to get to Kennebunk from Ontario, Canada, to come to the event. So the husband drove overnight. I think the mom and the daughter kind of spent the day at the beach while the husband slept during the day. And then they attended the event last night. And then they were driving home after the event last night because they couldn't afford the rates of the rooms that are down there.
It's kind of amazing the impact that it's starting to have on people's lives. And I don't know if it's even something that we can fully comprehend how a parent feels when they see that their child, who typically may have never even, been able to walk down, like to get down the beach, let alone go surfing. Like, I think I've seen it on the parents' faces more than on the kids. The kids have a great time, don't get me wrong, but it's the parents who are on the beach crying, right, most of the time.
Yes, well, the parents are on duty every second of every minute of every day of every week of every month of every year while these kids are growing up. And they, for the most part, unless there's somebody helping them, and by helping them, that means a highly structured environment for these kids and their parents. And what we offer is these parents show up at the beach, they register their child, and the minute they're finished registering their child, someone else takes over and they get them down, they get them into a wetsuit, they get them down to the beach, they meet a team of wet volunteers, and then they get in the water and they are allowed to just be completely free to do whatever they want. If they want to surf, they surf. And if they want to blow bubbles and play in the sand, they're allowed to do that. But most of the kids surf, and they find that they're very good at surfing. And for the parents, it's a little bit of a shock. First of all, their children have peers that they can relate to. And second of all, they are doing an activity that many of these kids are good at.
Do you find that there's been like a huge sense of community built inside it now?
Super.
Like, do you find people connecting through that event and like linking up their groups?
Yes.
And then being able to support each other outside of the event?
Yep. We have kids that come and they have friends that are in the program now. And typically, kids on the spectrum aren't tremendously social, but I'm finding that when they're connecting with this program and they see other people doing the same things they're doing, it kind of fires something in their brain and they make a connection. And we have kids that come and they want to surf right next to their friend. You see them hugging each other, having social interactions outside of the water, which is kind of unusual for some of the kids. Some of the kids are social, but not too many. But more so, the parents are on the beach watching their children be excellent at something, and they have other parents there that have all the days of their life are kind of pretty much relatively the same. So there is kind of a bond there that they understand what each other goes through. I think as communities, we don't understand what these people go through. I used to, before this, I would go into a grocery store and a child would be melting down and I would think, will you please control your child? Now I understand that sometimes when a child is melting down, it's because they can't deal with the stimulus that they're being overloaded with, or that their parent has pushed them beyond their capacity to deal. And I think once you understand that as someone who doesn't go through it all day, every day, it expands your capacity for compassion for a lot of different people that you really don't understand to start with, but you get a better understanding from interacting in this event.
Yeah, right. So one thing that you've learned along the way is how to be more, I guess, patient and understanding with people who are...
And expand your capacity for what it's like to be in society and to understand what everybody else goes through in their day.
Yeah. So have you learned anything else through the process of doing it? Like what other of your skills has grown by organizing this volunteering community event?
This is really kind of a tangent from your question.
No, be free on tangents for sure.
So there was a guy that used to walk on the sidewalk with someone he was a caregiver for. And when I owned the surf shop, I was down there all the time, and I would see this guy, and I used to think how pitiful, he really doesn't have anything going on. He was in a wheelchair and his head was off to the side and he kind of drooled and he didn't have any control of his limbs or appendages. And I used to think how sad. And one day his father was in the surf shop and I was introduced to his dad as his father. He was the dad of this man. And I said, well, why don't you bring him surfing tonight? And he did. And the next day I got a very long email from the guy in the wheelchair that he writes emails with his eyes by tracking his computer with his eyes. And it was a long, very educated email.
Really?
I had no idea. I was very hesitant and in anticipating this event. I was a little fearful and I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but I really had a great time and it was so exhilarating and I never expected to enjoy it so much. It was like 3 or 4 paragraph email. Well, come to find out the guy is a college graduate. And I have learned that's one of my biggest lessons I've ever learned in life is don't judge a book by its cover. And if the cover's blank, really don't judge the book by its cover.
Yeah.
So and that's something that we all should learn from life is you never know what's going on in somebody's mind and you never know the path that they've had to forge to get where they are in life.
So what do you do with that?
Don't assume and be a little more compassionate and a little more patient with people, especially when they're testing the limits of your patience, because you don't know the storm they braved to get where they are right now.
That's true. Worth reflecting upon. Before we move on to the next question, I just want to sort of wrap up the parts about special surfers and ask, it's grown in a way that I imagine you never really saw coming. You probably couldn't imagine where it is now those years ago. I don't know if it was a goal you set to make it big. I don't think so. I think you were just trying to help people and it caught on. And now you have this thing, right? And did you ever expect in any way that it would be the size that it is?
I really didn't have any expectations. I just I'm a fly by the seat of my pants kind of person. And it's huge. It's massive now. And when you look at the little bay that we do it in, we're pretty much at capacity.
Yeah, the whole beach,
and
pretty much.
I hope that I never have to turn anybody away.
Yeah.
But by the same token, it just keeps growing.
Yeah. Do you have like a vision for where it's going or just keep rolling with it? See what happens each year?
Well, it's been 21 years of full-time job in the summer and part-time job in the winter. And I'm 67 years old and I have 4 young grandchildren. So if I did have ideas of expanding it, I don't have time.
Yeah.
And I don't want to make time. So I like it the way it is.
Yeah.
And I would like it to stay the way it is.
Yeah.
Size-wise, participant-wise. But by the same token, I have never put a limit on how many people can come. Yeah. And I don't ever want to do that. I don't want to tell somebody, no, you can't come surfing because someone else already signed up.
Yeah.
So who knows where that'll take us? I have an amazing assistant that gets a lot of stuff done, and that's been getting more and more helpful all the time.
Yeah.
So who knows? I think the only limitation we have right now is the size of the beach at the location we do it at.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty amazing spot because the waves are most often very user friendly and they're great for what we use them for. So I kind of see this as the ideal location. But I mean, if we have to move on to a bigger spot, we will.
Yeah. And I feel like one other thing I noticed yesterday was you could always use more volunteers, right?
We never, ever, ever have enough wet volunteers. We always have people waiting to get in the water, and people are patient, but we still need wet volunteers. I really am a little bit apprehensive when I see 8 of the limited mobility, we call it special ops, mostly it's people in wheelchairs, when there are 8 people still waiting and most of the general population has already been in the water for a while. That limits how many rides they can get, and it limits the time they can be in the water. And I feel like the people that show up that are limited mobility, mostly in wheelchairs, imagine every day of your life like being in a car. You're on a smooth surface. Every once in a while, there's a little bump and it gets your attention. But for the most part, everything is flat. Everything is predictable. You're on a level plane. Nothing changes. And then somebody puts you on a surfboard and you go out and you're getting splashed and things are bumpy and you're going fast and it's kind of exciting and maybe you're going to fall and maybe things are going to change track. How exciting is that? And then your life has been pretty much boring as hell once you've done something like this. So for these people to sit and wait because I don't have enough wet volunteers, I really wish I had it so that they could get in the water for a couple hours as long as they could stand it. So yeah, I could definitely use more wet volunteers all the time.
So where could someone go to find out about how to sign up?
www.specialsurfer.org. SPECIALSURFER.org.
Nice. Brilliant. Oh, well, thank you for talking about special surfers.
And we have Facebook and Instagram as well.
You can find it on Facebook and Instagram. I'll make sure I put links to those both in the blurb below the podcast. So if you're in the New England area or anywhere, you could be even further away as far as I found out yesterday. If you feel like coming out to Gooch's Beach and helping out at one of the events every third Tuesday of the months of summer.
June, July, and August.
In June, July, and August in the US. So feel free to join in if that is something that calls you. Nanci, next section. One thing I admire about you is your no-nonsense go-getter. Invite anyone to come along for the right approach to life. Where'd that come from?
Probably... I always was pretty compassionate as a kid and wanted everybody to feel included. And I'm also kind of a goonie. So...
You mean like the movie?
Yeah.
Which one? Which one are you?
Oh, I don't know. I'm just kind of, I've always been kind of an outcast. I'm 6 feet tall and I was always really skinny. So I was called Daddy Long Legs and Beanpole and all the things that kind of became fashionable in the 70s. But
yeah.
I was that before it was fashionable. So, and I never was popular or anything now. And I mean, obviously, being popular when you're young is so overrated, and I wish everybody knew that from a much younger age than they do.
Yeah.
But I was always a goonie, and so now I feel like life is a party and everybody should attend.
Yeah? So just for a reference on this question, one particular moment that blew me away, I was heading out to visit Nanci at her house in Costa Rica. I'd started talking to someone on the plane and they followed me through the line. I called Nanci to ask where she lived. I thought she was close to the airport. Didn't turn out that she was close to the airport at all. It was about a 5-hour drive away. So I was like, I'm a bit stuck here. Meanwhile, I was talking to Nanci, figuring this out. The other guys told me they're going kind of near there. They decided they're going to jump in a taxi together. But Nanci invites them to come and stay at her house, and they stay for nearly a week downstairs at Nanci's house. These people she'd never met before, which is the full context of this question. How do you... what's the value of that?
I want to add that they were the popular kids.
They were the popular kids. That's true.
Yeah. So I do include the popular kids too. You don't have to be a goonie. But
what's the value in doing it?
You expand your horizons. You meet people and get insights into other mindsets and communities and what other people value. We don't all have the recipe. You can always tweak your recipe and get a new result.
So yeah, it allows you to expand your horizons, know people better. I suppose be more patient, be more inclusive, which obviously with special surfers seems like a big part of who you are nowadays. What about the no nonsense thing? Why do you not
When
take
you were
any crap?
talking about the trip you landed in San Jose,
Yeah.
and I remember distinctly telling you to take the plane to Liberia. And Liberia is an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half from my house. And San Jose is about, as you say, 5 hours from my house.
Yeah.
I think I did mention to you that was, you weren't following directions. And I am often called out for being, I call it direct. Some people tell me it's rude. But I'm not a fan of candy coating something because somebody wants to be told in a nice way. Sometimes telling people in a nice way, they don't get it.
Yeah. So you just like to keep it simple, direct approach.
Direct approach.
Everyone knows where they stand with you.
Yeah, you may be offended and you might not like me long term, but most of the time, people that can't handle it, I don't want to hang out with them anyway.
Yeah, right. So they end up just taking off anyway.
Right.
That's good.
Right.
And I guess the final part of that question was the go-getter. You never seem to stop. What's going on there? So you've always got something to do.
I think I've always kind of been like that, but yeah, I get bored if I hang out and do nothing. I get really bored. I can't not do something. I'm almost always doing something. And I think when I was younger, I was okay with not doing something, but that was because I had kids, and you kind of sometimes you kind of have to hang out and watch your kids.
Yeah. And they're often not doing stuff that's overwhelmingly exciting.
Right.
All right, cool. Next question. So one thing that I really admire, it's not just about you, this one. This is also about your partner, Mark. I really admire the life that you and Mark live. How's this lifestyle come about?
So I met Mark when I was 17, 50 years ago. And Mark is very thoughtful and analytical, and he likes to plan, and he's very organized. And I am, from many years of hitchhiking and adjusting, I am kind of a fly by the seat of your pants kind of person, and I change tack pretty easily, and I'm okay with changing the plan on a whim because you kind of have to do that a lot, especially if you're hitchhiking or if you're a traveler. I would be in California in the morning and decide to hitchhike home to New Hampshire, and in 3 hours I would be gone. And I didn't think I was doing that yesterday. I didn't know I was doing that yesterday, but I'm cool with going somewhere tomorrow that I hadn't planned for more than an hour or 20.
And that still is same now?
Yeah. You could say, let's drive to Newfoundland to look at some icebergs and give me some time to pack, and I'm ready to go.
Ready to go.
Yeah.
Whatever, so kind of like whatever takes your fancy.
Yeah, or whatever comes up as an opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And do you think, is it like impulsiveness, do you think? Because I feel like I do that too. Or is it more like a spirit for adventure?
I think it's spirit for adventure. I don't like to miss anything.
Yeah, fear of missing out.
Yeah,
got
for sure. FOMO. I got FOMO. That's probably why I can't take a nap. Mark's a professional napper.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, he had to study for it.
Yeah, and he doesn't have to study for it.
No. Okay, question 5 is, what does family mean to you? You have a very strong one, it seems. How did you build it?
I think early on, I thought family meant genetic family, and I have a very strong genetic family. I have our family, Mark, myself, our 2 kids, and Mark's family, and then he has 2 sisters and 2 brothers. They have 5 kids, 3 boys and 2 girls. My family is 3 boys and 2 girls, and I'm pretty close with my brother and my sister. And as time has gone by, I find that I have expanded my family quite a bit. I don't take you into the family because it's the cool thing to do. If I become close with you, I consider you family. So I have a lot of people like that I consider family. I wouldn't say it's huge, but I would say it's pretty inclusive of other people that I have become close with.
So the people that you're inviting into your network and things like that, they can eventually become someone that you consider family.
Yes, and they are welcome to all aspects of my life, and they are expected to pull their weight as well.
Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed as well. It's like, for me, I feel very much like included into your circle ever since I've come up here, and I know and respect that also means that you can come, but we've got stuff to do too, so we should do that as well.
And if I need your hands, they're going to be busy.
Yeah, like I remember we were coming into Special Surfers yesterday, right, getting ready to set up, and I was like, Dill, sometimes today Nancy's going to be just going for it, and we're along for the ride. We're just going to have to pick things up. We're going to have to jump in there, and it's going to be a quick-paced action, and you got to be ready for it. And he was as well. We both
right,
were.
and we did have a little while where everybody was sitting around, and at one point, I don't know if you heard me, and I said, "Okay, it's going to start going sideways now."
Yeah.
And it was good that we were sitting around taking a minute and catching our breath, because at that point it started and it was full on, and all of a sudden there were 50 kids waiting to surf.
And it gets kind of crazy and fast and hectic, but it's nice to know that you have people around you that are surrounding you that you can, I guess, assign trust to. This is one thing that I'm really fascinated by. I feel like Pete, who's another one of my mentors, really learned. I get the feeling he learned it from being around you. So for context, people listening at home, Pete is my boss, and he is basically considers Nancy and Mark to be his parents up here in Maine. But I can see a lot of things that have been passed down, whether you told me them or not, Nancy. I can see some things that Pete does that definitely come from things that you and Mark do. And I noticed that one of those things which is incredible, I want to learn how to do it better, is assigning trust to people. It seems like you all have this amazing ability to trust people to do what they're there to do.
And that goes back to the part where I'm very direct, because if I'm going to have to give you so much direction that I'm babysitting you, I'm just going to do it. So when I do find somebody that's capable, I'm good with throwing something at them and expecting them to do it. So if I throw something at you and I don't really give you a full-on manual on how to do it, it's because I expect that you will know how to do it, and that's me esteeming you as a very intelligent and very capable person.
So it's actually less of like you assign trust to everyone and more of you see the ability that other people have, and because of that you assign them something that you think they could do, right?
Right, but I also, it's usually only directed at people that I have in my inner circle. Because probably I don't keep the superfluous ones. I don't hang on to people that are not tremendously self-sufficient or capable. I think I see the value in a lot of people, but I also see that if somebody or some people expect other people to pick up their slack and do all their things for them, I don't keep those people in my circle. And I could do something. I could totally babysit you for the rest of your life, but I'm not going to.
So actually, to strip it back, it seems like you do let a lot of people into your life. You're willing to bring people in and expand your network, get to know people, try to understand people more. But when it comes really down to it, you're able to assign trust to the people who are still around because you've noticed something in them and you've decided that, okay, these people actually have something amazing to offer, so I'm willing to keep them around. And because of that, the tasks you give out can be completed, can be done.
Right. Right. And usually they come with a pretty good resume by virtue of how I've met them.
Through others, right?
Correct, mostly.
Yeah, so it's kind of like reference of others is, I mean,
right.
That's the cool thing.
Because the other people that I meet you through are a lot like me. They don't keep people in their life that are going to make their life harder.
So it ends up with this really sort of like nice, strong circle of people.
Exactly.
Bringing in more respectful people.
Exactly.
Okay, that's definitely flipped on my head how that all worked because I saw it a completely different way originally. Okay. Question 6. From what you've learned in your life, what are your most important lessons or wisdoms that you would pass on? If you had to tell, let's say you're just telling me, you wanted to pass me or anyone something that you've learned that you're like, I wish that everyone knew that straight away. What would that be?
Don't assume anything about other people and expect them to assume things about you. And don't spend your life apologizing for being who you are, because if people can't appreciate the value you bring to their life, then you really don't need to include them in your life so that you can feel like you're not living up to their standards, because if you're not living up to their standards, it's because you don't fit with that particular person or their circle of what they're building.
Yeah. So it's important to pay attention to what I guess other people are expecting of you and seeing if it fits with your own values and who you are.
Yeah.
And if it's not, then that's fine. Move on.
And it's fine. It's we don't all need to be in the same tribe. You know, we can all have different little clubs, and we all bring something different to the world. That's how it should work. I just don't want to have to carry you when I'm portaging my canoe up the stream of the world.
No. Oh dear. So the next one I have to ask is if you, let's say you and Mark were my parents. This is what I've been asking recently only. If you and Mark were my parents, what would you suggest that I do with my cash?
My answer to that will be very different than Mark's, but not so different anymore. But
what would you say? What would Mark say?
I would say, if it's going to add a lot of value to your life, do it. And Mark would say, it's going to add a lot of value to your life later, so hang on to it. But who knows if you're going to have a life later, so do it.
Yeah. Out of those two responses, sitting where you are now, which one would you put more value on?
Mark's. Mark has a better, Are you kidding? I mean, one time I was hitchhiking and I was in a McDonald's and I was just going to get fries because I only had $1.
Yeah.
And I looked down and there was $5 on the ground, and I put my foot on it, picked it up, and got a cheeseburger too.
Oh.
I probably should have saved it, but I didn't.
Yeah.
But that was a good cheeseburger.
So that's what happens when you fly by the seat of your pants in life. You know, sometimes there's just those little
you find that $5
that come along and just, there's something provided for you. Okay. So this is the final question on the show. I usually would get the question of the last guest, but there's been such a rapid succession of guests I haven't been able to bring it up right now. So we're going to double up on a question left to you by Nexus Lurie. And the question was,
what is your favorite thing to cook? Why? And then how?
Well, I think it would depend on the guests, but I think the most fun meal would be to take someone out to dig clams and have some lobster, maybe get some mussels while we're out because we live close to the coast in Maine. And we do tend to go out and get clams, and oftentimes we take people out clamming with us because it's an interesting endeavor, and that we eat with lobster and butter and nice cold beer, sit around and socialize quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's kind of more of a vibe than a meal.
It's like a meal experience.
Yes, exactly.
In a way, yeah. That's fun. And so the last part of the show is you're to leave a question for the next guest. You don't know who they are, so it's a bit of a mystery, and it can be anything. Like Nexus's one just now, it was about food, something he loves. What would you like to ask to the very next person who comes onto this show?
It's more of a question for everybody, actually, and that is to question what any particular person you're meeting or experiencing, what you can learn from that person, whether it's what kind of person not to be by being insensitive or unyielding or whatever it would be, to what could you add to your life from that person to make yourself a better person.
So that's the question for the next person.
Mm-hmm. What can you take from anybody you meet to either improve your life and your attitude toward life, or to learn what to take out of your life to be a better person?
Okay, and that's what I'll ask him. Well, Nanci, thank you so much for coming onto the show. It was a very Nanci fashion interview by the seat of your pants, on the road, directions being given, move into the lake house, greeting friends, sending texts, all of that, all of the above. But I appreciate that I could get even this time with you just to sit and hear some of your insight on the questions I was most curious about. And you definitely changed some of my reflections on what I originally thought about you as well, because now I understand it more deeply. So thank you for your time.
Could change.
Appreciate it. Right.
It could change any minute.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to our interview with Nanci. Next week we'll be meeting our new guest, Benji, and be talking about a life lived as an African drumming facilitator. This will release next Monday. Next, if you're one of our regular listeners, or even if you're new here, I'd like to invite you to leave a star rating for us on Spotify or Apple Music, or hit subscribe on YouTube. This genuinely helps us to get discovered by new listeners and would be epic if you could help us out. Thirdly, Between Views is opening its Patreon community. If you'd like to join the community and receive weekly updates and ideas, then you can check it out at patreon.com/betweenviews. In other news, Between Views is always looking for collaborators. If you want to join the team or create something together, then please reach out on Instagram. Finally, if you know someone who deserves to be interviewed or just have some feedback, then send us an email at betweenviewsbv@gmail.com or message us on Instagram. Thanks again, and see you soon. Between Views.